A lament, a lamentation, is a passionate expression of grief, often in music, poetry, or song form. The grief is most often born of regret or mourning. Laments can also be expressed in a verbal manner, where the participant would lament about something they regret of someone they've lost, usually accompanied by wailing, moaning, or crying. Laments constitute some of the oldest forms of writing, and examples are present across human cultures. History. Many of the oldest and most lasting poems in human history have been laments. The lament for Sumer and dates back at least 4,000 years to ancient Sumer, the world's first urban civilization. Laments are present in both the Iliad and the Odyssey, and laments continued to be sung in elegiacs accompanied by the aulos in classical and Hellenistic Greece. Lament elements figure in Beowulf, in the Hindu Vedas, and in ancient Near Eastern religious texts, including the Mesopotamian city laments such as the Lament for and the Jewish Tanakh. In many oral traditions, both early and modern, the lament has been a genre usually performed by women. Batya Weinbaum made a case for the spontaneous lament of women chanters in the creation of the oral tradition that resulted in the Iliad. The material of lament, the sound of trauma, is as much an element in the Book of Job as in the genre of pastoral elegy, such as Shelley's Adonais or Matthew Arnold's Thyrsis. The Book of Lamentations, Lamentations of Jeremiah, figures in the Old Testament. The lamentation of Christ is a common subject from the life of Christ in art, showing his dead body being mourned after the crucifixion. A lament in the Book of Lamentations or in the Psalms, in the particular lament, complaint psalms of the Tanakh, may be looked at as a cry of need in a context of crisis when Israel lacks the resources to fend for itself. Another way of looking at it is all the more basic, laments simply being appeals for divine help in distress. These laments, too, often have a set format: an address to God, description of the suffering, anguish which one seeks relief, a petition for help and deliverance, a curse towards one's enemies, an expression of the belief of one's innocence, or a confession of the lack thereof, a vow corresponding to an expected divine response, and lastly, a song of thanksgiving. Examples of a general format of this, both in the individual and communal laments, can be seen in Psalm chapter 3 and Psalm chapter 44 respectively. The Lament of Edward II, if it is actually written by Edward II of England, is the sole surviving composition of his. A heroine's lament is a conventional fixture of Baroque opera seria, accompanied usually by strings alone, in descending tetrachords. Because of the plangent cantabile melodic lines, of octavely free, non-strophic construction and adagio pace, operatic laments have remained vividly memorable soprano or mezzo-soprano arias even when separated from the emotional pathos of their operatic contexts. An early example is Ariadne's Lasciatemi morire, which is the only survivor of Claudio Monteverdi's Lost Arianna. Francesco Cavalli's operas extended the lamento formula in numerous exemplars, of which Cero's Negatemi respiri from Cero is notable. Other examples include Dada's lament When I Am Laid, Lascia Ch'io pianga, Caro mio ben. The lament continued to represent a musicodramatic high point. In the context of opera buffa, the Countess's lament, Dove Sono, comes as a surprise to the audience of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart's Marriage of Figaro, and in Gioacchino Rossini's Barber of Seville. Rosina's plaintive words at her apparent abandonment are followed, not by the expected lament aria, but by a vivid orchestral interlude of storm music. The heroine's lament remained a fixture in Romantic opera, and the Marschallins' monologue in Act 1 of Der Rosenkavalier can be understood as a penetrating psychological lament. Scottish laments. The purely instrumental lament is a common form in bare-reached music for the Scottish bagpipes. MacCrimmon's Lament dates to the Jacobite uprising of 1745. The tune is held to have been written by Donald Ban MacCrimmon, piper to the MacLeods of Dunvegan, who supported the Hanoverians. It is said that Donald Ban, who was killed at Moy in 1746, had an intimation that he would not return. A well-known Gaelic lullaby is Graigel Crete. It was composed in 1570 after the execution of Gregor MacGregor by the Campbells. The grief-stricken widow describes what happened as she sings to her child. Cumha Narclant was composed by Padruig Mór MacCrimmon in the early 1650s. It is generally held to be based on the loss of 7 of MacCrimmon's 8 sons to an unknown illness, possibly brought to Skye by a trading vessel. Author Bridget Mackenzie, in Piping Traditions of Argyll, suggests that it refers to the slaughter of the MacLeods fighting Cromwell's forces at the Battle of Worcester. It may have been inspired by both. Other Scottish laments include Lowlands Away, Macpherson's Rant, and Hector the Hero. Musical form. There is a short, free musical form appearing in the Baroque and then again in the Romantic periods, called a lament. It is typically a set of harmonic variations in homophonic texture, wherein the bass descends through a tetrachord, usually one suggesting a minor mode.